Hello. 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 It's me. There I am. Hi. How's it going? Um, so we're not breaking into the hey, let me go get it. Let me go get it. Hold it up. Talk about it with it in my hand. Cuz it's crazy. Cuz it's crazy. Oh. Here's the thing. Um, it's a ripe jackfruit. We're not breaking into it today because it's this big. And if we slide over, oh, it takes up the whole workspace by itself. Um, so I was gonna break into it, and I still could, but I think it would be better served moving the camera out onto the table, setting some plastic down, and getting a longer shot so we can really crack into this thing. So I will play around. We're going to break into this guy tomorrow. So stay tuned. We're having a bonus show tomorrow where we deal with a whole jackfruit. Um, it was in the discount thing, so I don't trust it to sit around any longer than that, honestly. There is one little soft spot on it, and that's probably why it got discount binned. Um, so yeah. So it's currently residing sort of slightly off the side of the kitchen here because I don't know what else to put it. So we can talk about what I might do with it later. It's a ripe jackfruit, not a green jackfruit. So dealing with it is going to be slightly different than I think most of us are expecting. Flemish, hi, welcome. Did you see the jackfruit? I can get it back. I can bring it back. It's too big to keep in here. We can talk about it. Jay, Liz, everyone's here. Hi. I may have jumped the gun on the jackfruit, but we can talk about it again in a little bit. Um, like I was saying, it's too big. It's too big for the workspace here. I mean, technically it's not. Technically I can manage it here, but it feels like it would be better at a long shot. So I'm gonna hold on to it for tomorrow. The other thing that I found, I already threw the box away, but the box is right here, is this stuff. Now, I have heard of corn. This is one of the older meat substitute brands. But corned beef hash. I've never had this, but I've heard some people really like it. And it is, as it says, soy-free protein. It's made with mushrooms. This one particularly has egg whites, but the first ingredient, and it goes out of its way to say 86% of the total is mushroom protein. So I want to give it a chance. Now it's not in the box anymore. This was in the discount bin, and it was a discount bin because it was slightly crushed. And when I opened it up, they were just kind of loose in there. And since the box had been slightly damaged, there was a small opening. Now they're frozen, so I'm not really worried about them, but they'd get real freezer burned if I just left them in exposed air, and they are already a little bit freezer burned. But I plunked them into a bag. We're going to deal with them basically how I would do chicken. Pasta garlic bread, seasoned beef hickory smoke. Nice. Nice. So what are we going to do with these things? First of all, they're kind of small. I don't hate that they're kind of small, actually. I frequently find that a whole chicken breast is too much. They grow chickens too big these days. This is more like a vintage chicken breast. We could do fajitas. That's a possibility. I have tortillas. I've got a bunch of vegetables. The box, which I just tossed back in here, but we can pull it out again. The box suggests 12 minutes in a sauce on the stove, or 8 minutes in no sauce on the stove. And that had me thinking, you could simmer this in a broth in a sauce and make like a almost a braise out of it. But I don't think you should do that first. I think we should follow its directions first. It's made out of mycelium, mycoprotein. And it looks a little freezer burned. And also, I have buffalo sauce and blue cheese. So we could, and this was my first thought, was buffalo chicken. Now, this isn't a wing, but I feel like you could do. Now, I don't have a sandwich. I don't have like a big piece of bread to make a sandwich. I'm just braining at it. I was kind of expecting to break into the jackfruit. Hi, Bookwoman. Thank you for the lurk. I was kind of expecting to break into that jackfruit, but logistics caught up to me, and I'm putting it off. What have we got? We can always go for more pasta. Bookwoman, what did you think? What would you do with this? Unless you just want to lurk, which is also fine. I feel like we're not going to take very long regardless, which means we have time to really brainstorm, and I'm going to put a couple of things away while we think. Onions, peppers are available. I also have banana peppers. What if we treated it like a Salisbury steak and made a gravy and cooked it in the gravy? Salisbury chicken, Salisbury fake chicken. Because that would occupy, well, it wouldn't take much in terms of vegetables. It would consume our mushrooms and onions quite nicely. But I don't know if that would really put a dent in the vegetables. A lot of vegetables these days. Liz has food. Good work. Flemish suggests to sous vide. You could actually sous vide this, because it tells you what internal temperature it's supposed to get to, and that is 165, which is the same as chicken, which is very convenient, and I hope was deliberate and not coincidental. It's very convenient for making a imitation chicken that it cooks the same way as chicken. But since we have a specific target temperature like that, you could set the sous vide to that temperature, get there perfectly. I am a little bit worried that because they're on the older side when I got them, that they're a little bit freezer burned, and they might benefit from a wet cook more than a dry cook, just as it would help assuage some of the freezer burn they may or may not have. We also have a whole bunch of them, so I could do two different things and play around with them. I kind of want to commit to playing around with them, but also I don't want to make a gigantic pile of excess food. I have, back to this guy, remember this guy? I have discovered an issue, and it is the back. See those drips? The back is not non-sticked like this, because that wouldn't make any sense. As soon as you put it on heat, it would burn the non-stick. But they did still texture it, and then, like, I think it's enameled. It's the same texture as the front. Well, no, it's not. It's a slightly different pattern than the front. But then it's enameled, and stuff keeps wanting to stick to the back. The back is difficult to clean, which is strange. The front basically wipes off with just a rag. The back I have to scrub, and even then, these are still like tacky. So that's a bit of an oddity. With this here pan, which is going to live out here because I don't have a place for it yet, because it's big and awkward and weird. Let me grab some vegetables. Yeah, the back should have just been smooth, I think. In my long description of my opinions on it in the Discord, it's a neat piece of engineering, but I feel like the designers got too excited about their own creation and went crazy with it. Okay, now Liz, that makes me want to do it as basic as possible just to do a comparison. If you've never had corn chicken, surprisingly similar to actual chicken. See, that makes me want to do it as bare as possible so that I can do a side-by-side comparison. Because I know what chicken's like. Should we just do that? Should we just play? We should just play. We should just play. And to that end, we're going to slide over here. We're just going to lightly oil a pan. I reorganized it. I got a new shelf. My neighbor over there, we've talked to him a few times, moved out, and I got a shelf from him, and I put it there. And it has been able to occupy some things that didn't have homes, and we've got breathing room on my existing shelves. I just need to stop acquiring new gadgets now. Okay. Olive oil, medium heat. Chicken thingy. Shout out to food scientists making things taste like other things. Encourage you to flavor it how you would flavor normal chicken, as it has a mild chickeny flavor. Okay. Okay. Well, the most basic thing I would do is if I was using bare chicken breast like this, I would not freeze it, or I would thaw it completely before I tried to cook it. I would probably cut it into small pieces to avoid drying it out. And I would cook it very quickly on a high heat. I don't like a whole chicken breast typically. These things look like they were designed to be cooked whole and then cut up. But otherwise, or simmer it. It's chicken. It's if I'm just treating it like chicken, if I'm just 100% treating it like chicken, then I wouldn't oil pan it like this. I would do one of these. And do like a braise. You're not going to get any surface browning. Now, there's also oil in there, but we're not going to get any surface browning. And this just gives you a real basic chicken breast. And then you'd serve this with, what would you serve this with? What would you serve this with? They have it served on top of a salad. A really, really basic salad of lettuce, tomato, and carrots. They have it peppered as well. Okay, okay. Okay. I think we're going to do two of these. I think we're going to do this one here, real basic, just to get a general idea of what I'm working with. I should turn the heat up on this so that we can get it to a simmer faster. Real basic to start. We'll figure out what we're working with, and then we might do a second one and do something crazy. Or I could save them. There's a bunch of them. I have 8 of them. Well, I have 7 more of them. So I could return to this well repeatedly. Because they're frozen, they'll keep well enough. They were marked down like crazy. 99 cents for the box. They're normally like $4, which is a little expensive. That's my biggest problem. My biggest gripe with all of these meat substitute things is that they're not hitting the economy. They're not hitting the economics. They need to figure out how to make their stuff competitive. I have no attachment to meat. I like it, but I also like other proteins. And if you offer me a delicious protein that's not made out of meat, I will eat it. But I am also, as we've frequently talked about, a bargain hunter, um, which is why we don't eat very much beef around here, because beef has gotten really expensive. So the beef substitutes are in a good place to actually like shake up the market. Chicken, on the other hand, real chicken is very inexpensive. Um, Even now, it's quite inexpensive compared to other proteins. We are bubbling over there. I can hear it and see it. You just stopped being a vegetarian. I'm not like. I know some people who are like, meat has to be in everything. Every dish has to, every meal has to have a piece of meat in it somewhere. And I'm like, no, not really. If the dish, like the flavors you're building, call for it, sure. But I don't think that it really is a necessity. And yeah, seasoning is important. The whole those idiots, the idiots. I call them idiots because they are idiots. The meativores, the the anti-vegan people on social media. Uh, they don't season their meats. They don't even put salt on it most of the time. That has got to be the blandest, most boring diet ever. Like, it's just seems dumb. So I find those people to be particularly dumb. A little bit of seasoning is not going to kill you unless you're allergic to it. Let's pick a slightly smaller onion. How's that chicken looking over there? You guys are keeping an eye on it for me. I have a general idea that I want to include peppers and onions, so I'm cutting up some peppers and onions so that we have them to work with. Fajitas is not a bad idea. It's real basic. I might want to flip the chicken. I can do that. I'll be with you in a second. Chicken. It certainly softened up. The bottom doesn't look particularly attractive. I assume that's the side that was on the assembly line surface when they were shaping these things. I had somebody on Facebook tell me that if I need to put seasoning, if I need to put spices on my food to make it taste good, then it wasn't good food. And that was just the most insane thing. that means that they're eating unseasoned whatever. So take my advice and get off Facebook. Um, I'm still on there, and I regret it all the time. All the time. It's just a cesspit. Yes, there's a great deal of overlap between that community and the very unfortunate, thriving, racist community. We have, let's see, that was a low sodium vegetable broth. So we haven't salted this thing up really much at all. I mean, I'm no vegan. Obviously, you've seen the things I make. I do think that culturally, Western diets eat too much meat. We should just dial it back. Not cut it out completely, but just dial it back. Um, it rarely should be like the main bulk of what you're eating. I say rarely, not never, rarely. But then, yeah, people, and it's purely a reaction to vegans. They're going full the other way and eating just meat and butter ugh, ugh. It looks disgusting. It's too far. It's too far the other way, and it looks gross. Happy middle. Happy middle is where we just need to land with all of this. With like everything in life, just happy middle. Happy middle. Tiny bit of salt on the top. Now this thing's not very thick, but we should take its temperature to make sure. There you are. I've got 155-ish. Oh, you guys are looking at a pile of vegetables. I was over here. I took its temperature. I just poked it with the thermometer. Oops. Okay. It has become slippery and difficult to flip with the tongs. So, I could. We're definitely boiling it off quite quickly. I think if we boil it down all the way, it will thicken up to the point where it might give us a sear on our surface. Do we want chicken, peppers, onions? This is very basic so far. This is very basic so far. I feel like it should be served on something, with something. We've got roots, we've got eggplant. I do not have minute rice, I have regular rice. I have couscous. Couscous is the fastest, like, base starch. Grits is probably the next quickest. Um, and partly we're still in the just experiment phase. And I think I want to give this a taste. Before we blitz forward, because I want to give it its own chance to just be itself. It doesn't look bad. It does not look bad. Get that off of there quick. I feel obligated to do something creative today, so it cuts like seitan. That is the kind of resistance it's giving me. Juicy. Very lightly chickeny. It's like a really mild but very distinct chicken flavor, which is not what actual chicken tastes like. The texture is softer than seitan. The texture is it's similar in firmness to actual chicken, but it doesn't have the fibrousness. It's way less bouncy than seitan, which I think is off-putting to some people. This would be much nicer. This is not like bouncy at all. It doesn't have that sort of rubber. It doesn't have that rubbery bounce to it. Try pulling it apart. Now it was a little bit hot, so I didn't want to. The flavor is quite nice. Now, some of that flavor is coming from the broth. It is literally boiling hot still, but it's cooling off pretty quick. So, oh, okay. It has a little bit of that fibrousness to it. It's definitely softer than either. It's interesting. It's not quite like any of the other meat substitutes in terms of texture. It's firm but tender and not bouncy. Which is the problem I usually run into with them, is that they often, in order to achieve that firmness to mimic meat, they go in the direction of bouncy. That's where seitan comes from, the wheat proteins. They just overwork some wheat proteins and then separate them from the starch, and you get this dense protein mass, but wheat proteins become quite stretchy and bouncy. It's a very elastic protein. This stuff does not giving me that character. I actually like the texture quite a lot. The flavor is also really, it's delicate. Now I simmered it in broth, so it's very juicy. But I feel like if you cooked white meat chicken like this, it would run the risk of drying out even in a wet cook like that, just because it kind of seizes up. This did not visibly shrink or change shape at all, which would suggest to me that the proteins aren't constricting as you cook it, which means it wouldn't dry out. It would just stay as it is but cook, which could be very handy because it would be harder to overcook, which is a feature of mushrooms anyways. Mushroom proteins are much harder to overcook. It's nice. I like it. I wouldn't be fooled into thinking it was chicken. I never want my meat substitutes to fool me into thinking they're the real thing, because they're not. They're different. I want them to be their own thing. You know what the chicken flavor tastes like? It tastes like this. It tastes like this. It's distinctly chickeny in a way that real chicken isn't. And it has that like ramen packet chicken flavor, but it's not really concentrated and it's not salty. It's like they took the chicken concentrate flavor and put it in there without the salt, which is nice, and also didn't go nuts with it. 4J. I am so far very impressed with these things. I might seek these out. Isosceles, you are first. You're the first one here. No one was here before you. They can't prove otherwise. Hi. Welcome, welcome. Some buffalo sauce. Let's give it just a dipper. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I've kind of mangled this one. Okay, we're gonna move forward with this, with the concept. Oh, this is a nice product. It's a good thing I have a whole bunch of these because I really want to play around with these things now. I'm extremely impressed with this corn. With corn. I'm super impressed with your product here, corn. Product of the UK. What do you know? This is one of the nicer meat substitutes I've ever had, for sure. I don't know how you'd turn this into meats other than chicken, but it does a decent stand-in for chicken. I often wait for things to be on discount before I give them a try, and sometimes they end up in my regular repertoire. I've looked at these before. As meat substitutes go, it's not a terribly expensive one. Some of these things get really pricey. Beyond stuff is like really expensive. Yes, I don't know what snake tastes like, so I can't actually say. My understanding of snake is that it's very tough. Um, but I bet you could do frog's legs. I bet you could do frog's legs. Um, I think Impossible does a really good job at one specific thing, and that is they have a darn good ground beef. Um, for burgers. They've nailed that texture. They've nailed the texture of a ground beef patty in a way that none of the others have ever managed to do. It doesn't taste like beef, but it tastes like mystery meat. You take a bite of it and you're like, what meat is this? You don't think it's beef. You're like, what meat is this? And you're expecting like some odd meat. You could give somebody a Beyond, not Beyond Burger, an Impossible Burger and tell them it was kangaroo, and they'd be like, oh, really? Because it tastes and feels like it's some kind of a meat. And that, I think, is where that company has actually nailed their product. Anything other than that, anything outside of that, I don't think they did a very good job. The Beyond stuff, I don't know about the Beyond stuff. I've never been a big fan of that one. And the Beyond stuff is really expensive. Now, Beyond and Impossible are both also very highly processed. One of the legitimate criticisms of that entire sort of vein of doing alternative meats is their stuff is really heavily processed. And that is an actual concern. I'm heating up a pan. We're gonna fry off our peppers and onions. Um, we're gonna fry off our peppers. You know what I want to do? You know what I want to do? You will not do Beyond or Impossible, but you will do fungus. I have no problem. I'll try anything. I'll eat virtually whatever. I'm getting out another one of these. I think the biggest thing with meat alternatives is just that we already have meat alternatives. We've had them for thousands of years. Seitan and tofu are both ancient, and they are meat proteins, or they are non-meat proteins that fill the same role as a meat in a dish, and they're not treated like they're trying to mimic other proteins. They're not trying to mimic a meat. They're just being a vegetable protein by themselves, and we need to do more of that. That's the realm I like to work in, where these things aren't trying to pretend so hard. And mushrooms. Mushrooms are also, they're not pretending to be a meat. Although in this case they are. And I quite like these, actually. Corn, I know, makes a chicken nugget too. And based on how good these are, I bet that's a good chicken nugget. George, hi. Welcome. We are currently playing with corn. Corn. Which I found on discount. We definitely have to thaw it before we cut it. How's it going, George? I should give you a shout out. What are we making? I'm just kind of playing around. I'm not sure what we're actually making here. Throw the cooked one in there. I guess we're kind of making a stir fry. What am I feel like this is going to be boring. I'm adding our reduced broth. Just kind of throwing stuff at it, yeah. What Liz said. It's they're not mushrooms. It doesn't claim to be mushrooms, and it's not mushrooms. It's mycelium, which is the bottom part, the root part of the fungus, which there actually is way more of than the little mushroomy bits, which I believe should make it more efficient. Which is probably why it's less expensive than some of the alternatives. One of my friends, who has supplied us with some materials, our friend over at Fox Familiar Farms, he grows his own mushrooms. He's got a mushroom setup, and they're these cubes where he gets the mycelium growing, and then the mushrooms come off the sides. The brick of mycelium is like solid. So much mycelium forms in there before it even tries to put out the little mushroom fruits. So if this company is just growing those bricks and then harvesting that'll be why they can produce so much of it, because that part of the mushroom, is by far the biggest. Yes, isosceles, the mushrooms are like the dongs, or the flowers. What am I making? What am I making? I'm just kind of cooking. I'm just kind of mindlessly cooking right now. What are we making? This needs something green. And a starchy base, and it wants rice. It wants rice for sure. Ooh, I know what we'll do. I know what we'll do. I keep wiping my nose. I must have subconsciously coming down with something. These guys cook very fast, and they also have a good rice flavor. Okay, if I'm doing a stir fry, another point in the corn's favor, it is not sticking to the steel pan at all. Actual chicken tends to stick just a little bit, and some of the other non-meat proteins I've used in this pan stick quite badly. But this, much like mushrooms, which is probably the connection, is not sticking to the pan at all, which is super nice. What I've got here are a little tiny pack of rice noodles. You don't like veggies? Oh no! But veggies are the best. No, I know some picky eaters. I know it can be a real challenge, that people don't want to be picky eaters. I'm cutting up a banana pepper. We're going to throw a banana pepper in there as a little bit of spice, a little bit of a milder spice. I'm going to do it real fast because I think we are going to overcook my stir fry real soon if I don't pay attention to it. I also think this needs some acid and some sauce. Some rice vinegar, some mirin, temperature down a little bit. Some soy, but not a ton because we already have stock in there. Just a dash of sesame oil. Some black pepper, take the heat off. Do I want to do cornstarch? I don't want to do cornstarch. I want to do tapioca. We are going to abruptly force the liquid in here to form a sauce. I am a convert to the use of tapioca instead of cornstarch for flash thickening sauces because you don't need to prehydrate your tapioca. Now, it doesn't have exactly the same properties and it's a little bit more heat sensitive. But dang, you can just toss it in there and it forces that liquid to form into a nice glossy sauce in just an instant. Look at that. Look at that sauce. So that's my pro tip of the day. Get yourself some tapioca flour and use that as a thickener. Just bang. Gravy cubes. That sounds like a British thing. Okay, I think we are on quite a good thing here. The noodles only just went in, like literally a second ago. It was just water up until just a second ago. What's cooking? We are playing currently with this, which I got on a discount, and we're giving it a test drive, and I am very impressed. And I have settled on a stir fry with peppers and onions, a pretty basic sauce of vinegar, mirin, soy sauce, and black pepper and sesame oil. There's some reduced vegetable stock in there, and we're boiling up some vermicelli rice noodles, which I'm going to throw in here. And I was just talking about how I thicken up my stuff here with tapioca instead of cornstarch. Cornstarch is the old classic, but I've been using tapioca lately, and it outperforms easily. Corn. And we're playing around today because the thing that I did acquire initially, I use those noodles to scoop up the sauce. Let me go get it. There's a bunch of you here now, so you can actually see it. We're putting it off till tomorrow. We'll be back for it tomorrow. Oh! I got this today, and I was trying to figure out what to do with it, and I've decided that I need to create a special workspace for it, so that's going to happen tomorrow. Oh, it's heavy. Yeah, it's raccoon egg. We're going to crack it open and eat the raccoon. Okay, and that is a very basic stir fry. I feel like I should make a second thing because we didn't use a lot of time today. No, whale kidney stones are white. With the program. It's a jackfruit. Apparently it's called a jackfruit because of a mistranslation of a word that the locals called it when asked what that fruit was. You know, like nearly all the names. It comes from the actual word for it that they just kind of... it is derived from the Malayalam word chaka, which is the name for the fruit. And the Portuguese who contacted them didn't know what they were saying and called it jaca. And then in English they tacked on fruit. So it's jaca fruit, jackfruit. So it should be called, I can't spell this because it's in a language I don't speak, but I can copy it. That's the name of it. We're going to put some scallions on top of this because it really needs something green. I don't do like the kind of things that I actually eat off camera for you guys hardly ever because they don't take very long. Like we waffled around for 45 minutes and then this stir fry took me 15 tops. I should do these as like YouTube videos. But then I have to learn how to edit. Gross. And there you go. Basic stir fry, corn, rice noodle, pepper, onion, different kind of onion sauce. Ketchup. I've got some real ketchup. Like the old kind. We made it ourselves. We it didn't make it myself because it takes forever. But I got some. We used it. It was fun. Let's taste this. Do I want to take a picture of this even? We'll do it just because. Should we make something else? What do you think? We got plenty of time. Oh, my phone's off. We got plenty of time. What should we play with? Stuff's falling out of my freezer. Probably a sign that there's too much stuff in my freezer. I've got frozen raspberries. What are we making? Dessert item. I don't have any dairy. Something mango juice. We have mango. We have Eggplant, lime, dates. Waiting for my phone to power on. Land O'Lakes. Do I? Do I? I don't think I do. The butter container in the door? Oh, the butter container in the door is not Land O'Lakes. It's Challenge. Because it was on sale. Normally I don't get butter in the tub, but that one was on sale. I find butter to be very much the same regardless of the brand. At least in the low tiers. So, to that end, I typically buy store brand. Here we have Festival Foods unsalted butter. And here we have Essential Everyday salted butter. And that's typically what I go for butter. But $2 for that big tub of Challenge butter. It's a big tub. I thought was a good deal. And butter doesn't really go off. The surface oxidizes a little bit, but doesn't really go off. Mmm. Mmm. Damn, that's... Okay, in a dish, and I know I just took a bite and said a couple times, but... Mmm. I just kind of dove in without any pretense, and I wish I'd given it a little bit more pretense. In the mix, in the stir fry, that corn stuff is amazing. Again, it doesn't taste exactly like chicken. I think it does a better job in a mix like this than real chicken. There's no gristly bits to worry about. I threw it in the stir fry after I had boiled it. And it's not tough, it's not dried out. Nice and juicy and perfect. I even got little brown edges on some of them, which I did on purpose. Like this one, I made sure to push them around and get little edges. And it didn't overcook them. It's, wow. No, you're right. In an application like this, so now I want to see what happens if you thaw one out and then just throw it in the stir fry as is instead of pre-cooking it. No, I'm very impressed. I just went and took a bite because I wasn't thinking that it was going to be a worthy of an additional layer of commentary, but it totally is. Oh, it's very good. Wheat Farmer, what are you doing? What are you doing? Thank you for the sub. Thank you for the 100 bits. 100 bits, as we've established for some reason, buys you me making a noise. What noise would you prefer? Also, Wheat Farmer, have you heard of this? I found it on sale for 99 cents, and I'm so impressed that I'm probably going to go back and buy it at full price. It's it's very fine. It's a mighty fine product, and in an application like this, yes, Bookwoman. This one has me impressed. By itself, it was pretty okay. In an application like this, in the mix, I think I prefer it to actual chicken. I can't say that for every application, but for a stir fry, I honestly think I prefer this to an equal amount of just chicken breast. Because it didn't dry out. It completely resisted drying out the way chicken breast would. So I have this nice, tender, flavorful thing, even though I did definitely overcook that stir fry a little bit. And no soy for people who don't like soy. I know there are people who are opposed to soy. And it has very few ingredients too. It's not like some of these other ones that we've encountered. That Spam stuff, which was very tasty. I don't know. It got shuffled to the back. I think I lost track of it. There's one in there. That Spam substitute that was very tasty from oh, what the heck? As soon as I say it, we'll all remember it. I gotta find it. Omni. I guess we're on a meatless kick right now. Remember this stuff? Remember this stuff? I quite liked this stuff. This was a tasty product. But water, soy protein concentrate, canola oil, cornstarch, potato starch, yeast extract, wheat gluten, methyl cellulose, soy protein isolate, flavor, salt, flavor again, and color. Whereas this guy has mycoprotein, egg white, yeast extract, calcium chloride, calcium acetate flavor. Way fewer things in it for what is honestly a very fine product. And the calcium chloride, calcium acetate has got to be a binder. Although the egg white is the primary binder. That's a thing. It is a concern. It does have egg in it. So it is not, in fact, vegan. But it is meatless. Whereas this guy is actual vegan. But yes, I'm very impressed so far with this thing. Now I got to think, what could we do tomorrow that combines it with jackfruit? Because I'm sure that they can make ones that don't. This particular one, and then we're standing around thinking about what else I could make to do a little bit more time. We could just have a talk. We could just hang out and have a chat while I nibble on this delightful stir fry I've made. That is always an option. Mm. Tell you what, let me grab my high chair. Oh. Settle in with y'all for a minute. Oh, so how are things going? And also, what do you want to talk about? We're going to do this. I haven't done this in ages. I did this once before. Typically, I try to avoid eating on the stream, but there's no reason for that. Yeah, this is good. Ages and ages ago, Sal mentioned corn chicken nuggets as her favorite chicken nuggets. Like, more favorite than actual chicken. And that has always sort of stuck in my mind as that's a pretty good endorsement. Because she's not a vegetarian. And honestly, this is a really good product. And now I got it for 99 cents. But normally, they're I looked, it was around $4 for this package new. This one was discounted because it had been crushed slightly. You can buy the strips. I would, based on how this one was structured, they're structured in like the little fillet patty things. But the pictures all show it cut up. So I would say either get ones that are already cut up or just whichever one gives you the most bang for your buck in terms of weight per cost. Because I think you would take this one, these patties, and just cut them up for most applications. Because honestly, a big piece of chicken on a plate is not a terribly appealing meal in general. I don't really like just a big piece of white meat chicken on a plate. I like it in something. Chicken's such a flat thing. And this has that sort of character to it where it really wants to be put in something in the same way. So having just a big piece is kind of, I don't know. I would be interested to see what they do with the breading, because if they do a nugget, the nugget would be breaded. And breading, oh God. Nuggets are like the perfect place to do alternative meats. Because they're already such little processed goobers that you can do almost anything and put it in that shape and people will happily gobble it up. So I bet you they make a pretty mean nugget. This is really good. It's also important for me to have vegetables right now because I briefly touched on it on Friday. It was a pound and a quarter. It was half of a kilogram of bacon in the discount bin I found on Friday. And I ate the entire thing over the weekend, which was way too much bacon. It was way too much bacon. I like bacon. That was too much bacon. So having some just vegetables and some non gross fatty meat definitely in the cards for my diet today. Interesting. too similar to real meat could be used as an endorsement. See, I was of the impression that specifically this thing. Now, this is the only thing I've tried. Are these the fillet here? I was under the impression that it was doing a decent job, but I wasn't fooled, and I liked that. I either want my meat substitutes to be just their own thing, or for them to have gone in the direction where they're mimicking meat in a place where the meat itself is completely not meat-like. Like those Spam slices. Those are very good because Spam, real Spam, which I think we don't have one. I can't hold one up because I don't have one. But real Spam is so far from the original meat that it's made from that it's basically indistinguishable. And that's the perfect place to use non-animal proteins to achieve the same thing because you're going to do the same process the heck out of them, cover them in salt, and get that product. And chicken nuggets are the same thing. They're just so processed. That's probably what you're keying in on. Is just the process to make a chicken nugget out of chicken is so intense that you could throw anything in that process and you'd end up with a chicken nugget at the end. You could probably throw other meat in and make like a pork nugget and people would barely even notice. Well, if you've never had this, and apparently several of you have, but Jay didn't. So Jay, if you can find this stuff, I would give it a try. I think it's delightful, and it's all mushroom based. Oop. I'm trying to talk with my mouth full. It's hitting a spot. Sorry, I'm just praising corn continuously now. It's hitting a spot that most meat substitutes don't, where I want to seek it out as its own thing. Which is where seitan and tofu landed, and is the reason I don't typically like things like Beyond and Impossible and Boca, because they're not being their own thing. They're trying too hard to mimic something else, and I would just rather have the thing that they are trying to mimic because I don't care about the being a vegan aspect. Whereas this stuff is doing such a good job that I would seek it out. And also, if I look at the package here, it's relatively low in calories, and it is actually quite high in protein. 9 grams of protein out of a 70-gram serving. Compared to, I can't see the serving size on that. Five grams of protein out of a 55-gram serving for this scrapple, which is mostly actual meat. Yeah. A little bit of corn for binder. So it's doing a good job of actually being a protein source, which is something that some of these substitutes don't achieve, they don't accomplish. They end up being lower in protein than the meat they're replacing. So as a dietary element, You have to be mindful. Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Well, I am just kind of hanging out. WeFormer, I owe you a mouth noise. Yeah, working on the cost. And these, now, 99 cents is very, obviously, better than I could get an equivalent amount of real chicken. So, for sure, worth it this time. Um, but I think it does it. I think it does it, what it's doing well enough that I would seek it out in a way that I wouldn't do with some of their competitors. Best if used by. Yeah, and it's got more than a year of. If this hadn't been caught in the machine and slightly crushed. So it's. I don't have any chicken breast on hand to do a comparison. I would bet you it is cheaper per gram than boneless, skinless chicken breast. But I would also bet you that it is more expensive per gram than pretty much any other cut of chicken, including bone in, skin on chicken breast. Um, Definitely more expensive than thigh. Um, which is my favorite piece of chicken, anyways. It's probably slightly cheaper than wings. I bet if they made a good little fake wing out of this stuff, that might be a real winner. How would you accomplish that and not just make it a nugget? Make a boneless wing that's not just a nugget. It's real close. But yeah, I know a lot of people, the part of the chicken that they like is boneless, skinless chicken breast. Um, and that is not the part I typically like. Although, given that these are doing such a good job of being chicken breast, like the thing I made here, I treated it like I would chicken breast. And it overperformed. So in that regard, I probably would get this instead of chicken breast for things that call for chicken breast. So it's an interesting point. It's landing at an interesting point in the scale where it's not just more expensive. It's only more expensive sometimes. And the thing that it is cheaper than is also the thing that it is doing the best job of replacing. Ooh. Got some pepper seeds. Liz is going to burb. I am going to water. Where's my water glass? Oh. We should brainstorm ideas what to do with that jackfruit. What do you do with a jackfruit? Because we're gonna be breaking into it. I'm pretty sure it's quite ripe. So we're not gonna get that fibrous, underripe, meaty thing that you use to make like meat substitutes. We're going to get just fruit out of it. Fruit and seeds. Seeds are supposed to be edible if you cook them. The jackfruit seed. Are like nuts. And you can also eat the fruit part. Boiled. Strange. Like a boiled peanut? If they taste nutty, if they end up tasting nutty, depending on how oily they are, we could make like a jackfruit PB&J out of it, because the fruit, when ripe, is sort of tropical sweet, and I could make that into a jammy thing, and it'll depend on the nuts, on how nutty the seeds are. It says you want to boil them though, which is strange. Until they're tender. So they're like beans. Interesting. Interesting. Belgian waffle with a jackfruit compote. I have the waffle iron. It lives down here now because I have room for it. Waffle iron. Jackfruit. Having something that I can prepare in that room, because we're gonna set up in there, around the corner where I always go when I leave the room. Just because there's not enough room here for that big thing. And we could run the waffle iron in there. I'll have to pull out the hot plate if I want to make a compote. And then like a sprinkling of the nuts over the top. That's a decent idea. And then we can just have a pretty basic waffle underneath. That's not a bad shot. Do like a breakfasty thing. Tropical breakfasty. That's not a bad idea. And I'm suspecting that breaking the thing down is going to take a lot of time. So something that's relatively easy like that would also be a good idea. We're gonna pin that idea because that's a good idea. I can write that down. I'm gonna go write that down. Write that down. Okay, it's written. So it is written. So shall it be considered. Boy, how do people maintain a conversation when they're not cooking? It's just so much harder when I'm not cooking. And I keep taking bites, which makes it worse, because then there's something in my mouth. We could check out these fancy sardines I was given. Maybe not today. I'm just opening the cupboard and looking straight across at stuff that is in here. Like Mrs. Adler's fish bits. Boy, they look unappetizing. Fancy sardines. A big jar of citric acid. Ooh, pandan. Cento, solid pack light tuna. Now dolphin free. Just a bunch of odd stuff. Don't forget, kids, there's actually a label, a mark that goes on the label if your tuna is dolphin free. And if they don't have that, question why they didn't put that on there, because it doesn't cost them anything. But they have to actually be dolphin free to put that on there. If we compare to chicken of the sea, theirs also says dolphin safe. Canned tuna is one of those things that I tried explaining this to someone, and I blanked on a good way to say it, and then afterwards I came up with a good way of saying it. It's like liquor. Cheap canned tuna is bad. Quite bad. Much like cheap liquor is bad. But you get what you pay for. So the more expensive stuff is actually quite a lot better. But it's also quite a lot more expensive. Which, if people are used to just the cheap crap, they're not going to want to spend money on the nicer ones because they are going to assume it's just going to be the same thing but more expensive. But canned fish, there are people who swear by canned fish, and they get the really expensive stuff. Now, I think that canned tuna, for the most part, is quite bad. And I have a chicken of the sea in there, which I just showed to you. But I think chicken of the sea is just terrible. Like, just terrible. Now, this other brand, this Cento, I'm familiar with Cento in general. I like their anchovies. I've never had their tuna, and I found them on sale, as usual. And I decided to give it a go, but I haven't actually had cause to crack into one of them. So I don't know. I can't speak to that specific one. But I can speak to the overall trend where the more expensive ones I've tried are considerably better than the cheaper ones. It's a really obvious thing. But also, canning tuna for the most part seems bad. The way tuna are harvested, I eat tuna, but I eat usually tuna as a piece, like a steak. I think it's more, or in sushi, I think it's more respectful, if that makes any sense, to the tuna, to treat it more like a nicer product instead of mass harvesting, grinding it up, jamming it in a can, and saying, "Here, it's the cheapest thing we could possibly make." Seek out tuna that is more expensive because you're treating it better, and also, yes, mercury levels. Eat less of it in conjunction with treating it like a nicer product. Going back to what I said ages ago when we were talking about meat, I just think we should eat overall, not no meat, but less. Treat it more special. Instead of jamming it into everything and thus demanding that we have the cheapest thing because it has to get crammed into every single thing, treat it like a nicer product. Treat it more special. Celebrate it. And in conjunction, use a bit less. A lot, God, so much stuff we have is left over from World War II. That's, uh, in that vein, see current events for leftovers from World War II. Yeah. World War II is why we have Hershey's chocolate that Europeans say tastes like vomit. Because it does, and we've just trained ourselves to not mind it. Hershey is not good chocolate, but I don't think it tastes vomity. But if I eat some and focus, I can pick out that flavor that they're keying on, which is butyric acid. Which is in it because Hershey chocolate was included in army rations in World War II. And in order to make it more stable, room temperature stable, for the army rations, they treated the milk. They cooked the milk in a certain way before combining it with the chocolate, and that caused the milk to develop more butyric acid, or I'm probably mispronouncing it and don't know how to spell it, which meant the chocolate was more stable, but also that's the stuff that makes spoiled milk gross. And millions of troops just got used to it because it was a little piece of chocolate in their ration and they were glad to have it, and they just kind of got used to it being kind of have that little bit of ick to it. And when they came back, they just wanted that flavor still, so it kept getting sort of reproduced that way, even though there wasn't the need for those really ration stable chocolates anymore. Although we still do that, stacks and stacks of chocolate just sit at room temperature on convenience store shelves and don't get weird. Or they don't get weird nearly as fast as they would. So we're kind of still doing it. But that's where that comes from, and that's why it's there. And we've just kind of collectively gotten used to it in America, which is, I mean, it's quite telling that, like, there's just this gross flavor that is the gross flavor of spoiled milk in a lot of our chocolate. We know it's there, we know it's gross, and we've just kind of gotten used to it, even though there's no reason for it to still be there in current year argument. World War I, Depression, World War II, and then those things just carried forward. And some of those things have become fancy. Corned beef brisket ain't cheap anymore. But it used to be, because it's one of the toughest pieces of meat to cook, which meant it was really cheap. So Irish immigrants in New York who couldn't get cheap pork for the thing, I can't remember what it's called, that they were trying to make, got the cheapest piece of beef they could find and did that instead. And they made it really good, and now it's really good. But that started out because it was just literally the cheapest thing they could find. Well, my dinner is eaten for a change, which we don't normally do. We had a little talk and just me grabbing random things and talking about them. I should probably use this at some point. 1 ounce of imported French honey that I got for 69 cents. I mean, that sounds good. It sounds like you could also gussy it up quite a bit if you wanted to, but it's based on things that are just cheap and available. Also, being in Wisconsin, we put pasta in our chili, so specifically we put elbow macaroni in our chili. So you sound like you're about halfway to just making a Wisconsin chili. Just get some Worcestershire, a couple spices, a can of beans. There you go. Oh, sure. Cincinnati's famous for it. They use spaghetti. But over here, elbow macaroni. It's quite common. Go full Midwest, yeah. Well, you got to put cheese on it. You can't have chili without cheese. Do I have to make Wisconsin food for you guys? I don't typically make the food of my people. My people. I could go on a full, this is local nonsense. Make a butter burger. Use some of that butter. Oh, I'm sure that the upper Midwest thing goes straight up into the part of Canada that's directly north of here as well, which is eastern Alberta, I think. I forget. I lose track of the layout of. I'm due south of Thunder Bay, so Western Ontario. Alberta's the other side of Saskatchewan. I was thinking of Manitoba. Tuna casserole with potato chips on top. Oh, that sounds great. Um, farmer grocer Norwegians from the prairie. We have a lot of Norwegian around here too. Um, uh, lutefisk and lefse are both. I could go to a local grocery store here in Wisconsin and get lutefisk and lefse just on the shelf, ready to go. Um, that's how much Scandinavian influence we have right here. Um, but I didn't make much of a mess today because we spent most of the time talking. I stood up because I think we're gonna wind it down because I finished that bowl. I ended up not making a second thing. I just chit chatted, which was fun. Your great grandfather first immigrated to Hanley Falls, Minnesota, before moving to Hamlin, Saskatchewan. I assume that's directly across the border. Or wait, no, Saskatchewan doesn't border Minnesota. Saskatchewan borders Montana. I lose track. All you Canadians look the same. Um, yeah. So I think I had a good run there. I've actually finished my dinner and only made 3 dishes. It just feels so weird. It feels like I haven't done anything. I'll make up for it with a horrific mess tomorrow when we break open that jackfruit. Um, anyways, yeah. So I'm gonna rate us off. Let's see who's alive on a Monday. You know who's alive on a Monday? You know who's alive on a Monday? Um, LaFay. We're gonna go see LaFay. We love LaFay. LaFay is playing a game that I don't know called Tiny Glade. It looks like a cozy garden building game, which it might be literally just a garden building game, which would be great. Um, thanks for sticking with me for the nonsense today. Come back tomorrow to see that jackfruit. We're doing it tomorrow. I'm gonna haul this camera over there. And I'm gonna do it on the table so that you've got a long view of it. And yeah, that's the plan. We're gonna find out. I don't even know what we're gonna do with it. We're just gonna find out. Jay had a reasonable suggestion of waffles. Um, yeah, so thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the sticking with me for the chatting segment. The whole purpose of this chair was so that I could plunk it in here and just hang out with you guys sometimes. Um, and we did that. Great. I'm definitely going to play with this corn more often. And I'm going to keep an eye out for other things like the nuggets and the strips and all that stuff because it was really good. Super impressed with it. Um, so yeah, see you tomorrow. We never say that. See you tomorrow.